Bonjour, c'est Madame Jones, and if you're watching this, well done because you are all ready to revise for your foundation reading French exam. You've already saved 25% of your marks for French, but listening and reading together is worth 50%. So you need to put a lot of effort into revising the keywords and the strategy for these tests. This video is to help you, so you can listen to the entire thing, or you can go to a section that you think will be the most useful for you. Here are the sections in the video. We start with some general tips, then we focus on section A of the reading exam, then we look specifically at the gap fill questions before moving on to a little bit of section B. Then we will look at section C, which is translation into English, and we will finish with some literature questions. It's going to be quite a fast tour of the paper, so please feel free to pause whenever you need to and make notes. You can also pause before I show you how to complete the question and have a go at it yourself, and then listen to my advice and see whether you did the same thing as me. The most important thing is that it's useful, so use it in whichever way suits you best. The reading exam is divided into 3 sections. The one that's worth the most marks is section A. It's worth 28 out of 50 marks and the questions are all in English. Section B has questions in French, that's worth 15 marks. And finally we have section C, which is your translation into English, 7 marks. If we take a look at the 2019 grade boundaries, these ones were the harshest that we've ever had. You will see that to get a grade 5, you needed 37 marks at least out of 50. Hopefully it will be a bit more lenient this year, but you never know. So let's aim for 37 marks out of 50 for our grade 5s. When you're completing the reading exam, the overall strategy is to look at the question first, so you know exactly what information you're trying to find. You can then have a look at the main text and scan for keywords. Be careful of tricks. Examiners like to use negatives so that you find a keyword, but it's actually saying that the author doesn't enjoy that particular hobby. They might use this negative, ne followed by que. This one catches a lot of people out because it actually means only. So the sentence will be saying something like, I only enjoy playing basketball, or I only play tennis. So be really careful if you see the combination of ne and que together. I strongly recommend you take a highlighter into the exam and start by highlighting any negatives that are jumping out at you in the text. Do not leave any questions blank. I've told you before many times, a lot of this paper is multiple choice. If you're leaving a question blank, you're throwing away marks. Remember, to get the grade 5, we're aiming to get 37 marks roundabout. So we can't afford to be dropping 3 marks just by not answering a question. Section A is worth 28 marks. It's all in English and most of it is multiple choice. So it's a great place for you to start gathering those marks and getting as close to 37 out of 50 as possible. You can use what we refer to as the Where's Wally technique. When you're completing a Where's Wally puzzle, you know that you're looking for someone dressed in that stripy outfit wearing glasses. You know the answer, but you need to scan for it and you need to find it, and sometimes there's some tricks. It's the same thing in the French exam. If you look at the question first, you will know what type of answer you're scanning for. For example, in this question, we are looking for someone who enjoys cooking. Is it Adèle, Jules, Sarah, or Nora? Instead of reading every single word of this text, I can scan through and look carefully for a word that's to do with cooking or to do with food. If I don't know any of that vocabulary, I could even look for someone who's saying something positive. However, don't just go for the first word that jumps out at you. For example, if I just were to look at this one, j'aime, oh that's positive, if I don't read the rest of the sentence, I won't realise that this sentence is actually about tennis and it's nothing to do with cooking at all. I've got to scan through and find someone that's saying something positive, c'est ma passion, and something to do with food, la cuisine. Let's have a look at another example. This person does not enjoy sport. Remember what I said in the previous slide about looking for negatives. If I scan through this text, I can see a negative here in the second one, and I can see a negative here in the final one. So I've got two options for what this answer could be. I need to go back to the question. What exactly is it that I'm looking for? It's someone that does not enjoy sport. So if I look at this first one, je suis pas sportive. This person is not sporty. So I know that that is going to be the right answer, and I would write Jules in the box. For the final example, we've got somebody who does not like reading. Now, because I used blue to highlight my negatives, it really stands out that it's got to be Noah. Even though I might not know what la lecture is, I can see that that's the only other negative, so that has to be the right answer. Another style of question that you will encounter in section A looks kind of like this. You have a multiple choice, you have 4 different options. Again, you can start by reading the question. So in this question, it's saying Rodney is asked to prove his nationality, open his suitcase, follow the signs, say what his job is. When we have a look at the text, we need to find somewhere where Rodney is being asked to do something. Because this is question 1, most likely it will be near the top. And if we look here, we can see the word demand. If you're demanding something, it's the same as asking something. So here it's saying they are asking me, ouvrir, ouvrir. Now, ouvrir, even if you don't know it, it matches open. And if you look, it's the one that's the most similar, isn't it? Ouvrir, open. It's not as similar to prove or follow or to say what his job is. There doesn't seem to be any job title there. And we could see ouvrir, my, something that he owns, valise. So valise must be his bag. So by looking for clues, we can work out that this is going to be the correct answer. We can narrow it down. I like to highlight when I've found where the answer is in a text or underline it, because if you do that, then you know that you've already unpacked that bit, so it's not going to help you out for one of the later answers. As I said previously, and as I say a lot in class, do not leave anything blank. The questions where you might be the most tempted to do this are the open-ended ones. However, we can all make a sensible guess without even seeing the text. For example, in this question, what did Madeleine's father think about living on a farm as a child? We don't even have the text in front of us. So imagine you might be looking at it and you can't see the answer at all. Guess something generic. For example, it was boring. Maybe it's wrong, but maybe it's right. So guess a sensible answer if you're really, really not sure. For the second one, give one reason why Madeleine would like to live in the mountains. Let's guess that it's very beautiful, because that would be a logical answer. It might be wrong, but we might get an extra point. There are some questions where you have to fill in the blank in a sentence by using some words from a box. For this type of question, it's helpful if you group the words into categories, such as times, foods, and places. If you look for similar types of words, then you will realise that there are only 4 possible answers for a sentence, or sometimes there's only even 2 possible answers for a sentence. This can help you out quite a lot. For example, if you look at the words that are circled in green, you can see that in this one, the sentence will be saying something along the lines of entry to the museum is, and you need to decide whether it's free or €5. If you've narrowed it down, you're only choosing between 2 words instead of choosing from a bigger group. So this gives you more of a chance of getting the right answer. If you don't have lots of colours, you can use codes. For example, you can draw a box around some of the words, a circle around some, a wiggly line under others, a dot next to some. But this is a really good way of figuring out what is the right answer to this kind of question. Once you've figured out your categories, it becomes very obvious which words could fit in which sentences. For example, in the first one, we know that it's talking about a date, so it's going to be Saturday or Sunday. For the second one, we're talking about something you can buy at the barbecue, so we've got chicken and we've got sausages. Entry to the festival, that's the €5 or free one. Now look, we're only choosing between two words here, so we've really narrowed it down to 50-50. We've given ourselves a really good chance of getting the right answer, even if we're not 100% sure of what the French bit says in the text. D has a potential trick. It says there will be a concert in the, so of course it could be afternoon or evening, but it could also be one of the places. It could be the park, it could be the town hall, it could be the castle. I haven't put tourist office because to me it seems less likely that there's going to be a concert in the tourist office, but I will make sure I check for it when I scan the text. And the final one, concert tickets are available at the park, at the town hall, at the castle, or this one could be tourist office if you think of the kind of place that you would go to buy something for an event. Now that we have our possible answers, we can have a look at the paragraph itself. And this will help us to choose between our options. So for the first one, we can see we've got samedi, which definitely you will know is Saturday because Sunday is the odd one out, it's dimanche. For the second one, we've got a little bit of a trick here because look, we've got the word poisson. So sometimes I've seen pupils write down fish for this one. However, that will never be the right answer because you have to choose one of the words from the box. And the only words in the box are chicken and sausages. So you could see that we've got the word poulet, so we know that it has to be chicken. Entry to the festival is, you could see the word gratuit, so we've got free, there's no mention of money in here, so that's quite easy to figure out. There will be a concert in, so we've got le soir, so that's talking about the evening there. And concert tickets are available at the Office du Tourisme, which obviously is going to be the tourist office. Now look how quick and easy it is to find our answers once we are only working with a small group of words. In section B of the reading exam, there's another one of these questions, but this time it's all in French. The sentences are in French and so are the words in the box. If you put these words in categories as far as you can and try to match them to the question, you will still have a better chance of getting the right answer than if you just randomly guess. If you want to try this one yourself, pause the video, see if you can arrange these words into categories and press play when you're ready to hear my answers. Sometimes you end up with two leftover words that you're not really sure about. So then you can probably group those ones together. Let's have a look. We have the word excellent. Notice that it has an S on the end. So whatever it's describing, there must be more than one of them. That could be a clue that could help us find out the answer. I've matched this one up with difficile, excellent, difficult. They're both adjectives. They've both got S's on the end. So they're both describing something plural. In a red group, I've got bibliothèque. Bibliothèque is the library, so I might be looking for other places. And then I find école. École is a school. École, bibliothèque, both places. In a separate category, I've got a school subject, les maths. And with that, I might also put la lecture, reading. That's a key word for you to revise because it's appeared in two different questions in this presentation so far, la lecture. So it must mean that a lot of pupils will forget that one. We've got arrêter, and we can see that it ends in an ER, so it's an infinitive, it's a verb. Can we see any other words that end in ER? We can see continuer, so we've got two verbs there and they're opposites, to continue and to stop. We've got l'avenir, which we know is talking about the future. And there we've got the opposite of the future, le passé, the past, the future and the past. And then we end up with this leftover word, le lendemain, which is actually also a time phrase. Remember, only certain words can fit in certain sentences. That's the point of categorizing them. So we need to start now looking at the sentences and looking for clues that will help us to work out which words could go in which gaps. First of all, we can make sure that we're reading for meaning. What does the sentence mean? Who is it about? What does the word just before the gap mean? So for example, in D, we have les conditions étaient. The conditions were. It has to be an adjective. It has to be something that's describing what these conditions were like. You can also read for grammar. So in B, we can see that we have une with an E on it. So it has to be feminine, the word that comes next, has to be a feminine word. So these are clues that can help us figure out which words can belong in which sentence. In the first sentence, straight away, I can see a negative. And I've brought my highlighter with me into the exam, and I've made sure that I've highlighted that so I don't forget about it later and get caught out. What is this sentence actually saying? Elle ne voulait pas something ses études. She didn't want to. Voulait, voudrait, I would like. She didn't want to blank ses études. She didn't want to something her studies. Now, when I have a look at the different options that I've got, it seems likely that it's going to be continuer. She didn't want to continue her studies, or arrêter. She didn't want to stop her studies. Sometimes you can use things like the example. In the example, it says that after her exams, Marie-Claire went to Senegal. So if she went there after her exams, does she want to continue her studies or not? You can sometimes use clues like that to help you find the answer. For B, we've got an E with an accent, and we know that when we see an E with an accent, it's going to be past tense. So she worked in a... We can also see that it's got to be somewhere feminine because it's got an E on the une. So it could be bibliothèque, she worked in a library, or it could be school. For C, we could see yet another E with an accent. She helped with blank and writing. What's the word that normally matches up with writing? Could be la lecture, reading, but it could also be maths. It could be a trick. She helped with maths and writing. Whenever we've got les conditions étaient, something was, we know that it's going to be describing. So it's going to be something like the conditions were difficult or the conditions were excellent. And that leaves the final one. If we look at our colour codes, we haven't really used the green group yet. So we've got dans blank in something, elle a l'intention de travailler au Sénégal. So we've got l'avenir, we've got le passé, we've got le lendemain. Now there's a clue here, intention. If you intend to do something, does that sound like it's going to be happening in the past or in the future? Now we can compare our sentences with the main text. Remember, we're only trying to find 5 pieces of information in all of that text. So for the first one, she didn't want to continue or she didn't want to stop her studies. Now some pupils, if they're rushing, will straight away see the word stop, and therefore they might be tempted to think that arrêter is the correct answer for the first one. However, if we look at the full sentence, j'ai voulu, I wanted to stop my studies. So if she wanted to stop them, that means that she didn't, remember our negative that we highlighted, that she didn't want to continue them because she wanted to stop them. So that one's a bit of a trick because it's got the same word in the text, but it's actually meaning the opposite. For the second one, where did she work? So we've got the word éducation, les salles de classe, and we know that that is talking about working in a school, okay, working in education. Elle a aidé avec, what did she help with? So here again, if I've got my highlighter, I should have highlighted that here I've got a negative, ni and ne. If I go back to the start of the sentence, it's saying 50% of people who live in the countryside don't know how to read or write in the place where she's working. So therefore, our answer would be la lecture. She's helping them to learn how to read. How were the conditions? So here we can see the conditions were very difficult, mais, that's one of those that changes the meaning, the experience was positive. So the conditions were difficult, the experience overall was positive. And then for the last one, we can see future tense. I'm going to return later. I'm going to return to Senegal. So as we predicted, it's l'avenir because it's talking about her intention. Many pupils on the foundation paper think that section B will be really difficult because it's all in French. However, a lot of the questions are easy if you approach them with a match-up method. For example, look at this text. 4 different people talking about jobs. Look at the sentences, statements in French. Instead of panicking and reading every single word in the text, start by looking at the question and match it up to the text. So for example, in A, we can see somebody a travaillé, E with an accent, so past tense. So somebody worked exterior, outdoors. Somebody worked outdoors. When I scan through each person, I can try to see where they were working. So here we've got something about a tourist office, so we need to be careful of that. We've got a centre commercial, a shopping centre. They don't really sound like outdoors kind of jobs. Next, we've got l'hôtel de ville, so the town hall. Again, not really outdoors. Here we've got something about working indoors, but look, we've highlighted this bit as a negative. So working indoors is not a good option for Christophe. So did he work outdoors? It's saying that his dad is a builder, so building that can be outdoors. And here we've got in the plein air, in the fresh air. So it seems most likely that Christophe is going to be our answer for A, because it's somebody who's working outdoors. Now see how we actually just looked and matched it up. We didn't panic, we didn't read every single word. We were just on the hunt for something that would match with exterior. Now the second one, imagine I don't know the word for mairie. Imagine I'm not really sure what that means. So what I could do is move on to the next one and come back to that and see what I've got left over. So in the next one, I've got someone who trouvé, someone who found their job fatigant, fatigue, tiring, someone who's got a tiring job. So again, if we're scanning through and we're looking for adjectives, Anouk is saying utile, useful. But again, we're looking for negatives and we see it's not very useful. But that's nothing to do with tiring. The second person thinks that it was génial, they're really excited about their job. Again, nothing to do with tiring. Now when we get to Christophe, Christophe is working with his dad as a builder. Building, that sounds like quite a tiring job. And here we can see the word mais, but c'était amusant, it was fun. So maybe this word, maybe épuisé, could be a synonym for fatigant. Let's just check in the final one. Do we see anything to do with tiring? We see that they're in a hotel. We see the word exterior, so that was a bit of a trap because they were trying to get you to match that one with A and just match the words up. But it's actually saying, look, je détesterais. I would hate to work outdoors. So that was a bit of a trick. Can we see anything about it being tiring? The receptionist was gentil, was very nice. The work was boring. So again, this answer is once more Christophe. We have a second one where we found Christophe as the answer. So maybe it's unlikely that Christophe will come up again, but we've got to keep an open mind. When we get to D, we've got les collègues, so we're talking about the colleagues of somebody, and they were sympa, they were very nice. Now remember that in Damien's we saw that the receptionist était gentille and le directeur. So the director, the manager and the receptionist, they were really nice. So that one was a very simple one. Damien, the colleagues were very kind or nice. Then we have a look at the final one. N'a pas eu. That's a bit complicated, but it's another negative. So didn't something, premier choix, their first choice. So they didn't get their first choice of a placement. So it's somebody who wanted to do one thing, but ended up doing another thing. So we know Christophe, we've already used him quite a lot. It's probably not going to be him again. And it's just saying that he didn't want to work outside and that his dad gave him a place. So it's not Christophe. Damien, it's saying about the receptionist. It's saying they worked in a hotel. So again, there's nothing in there that's about not getting their first choice. When we look at Beatrice, Beatrice has a negative here. Je ne sais pas, I don't know, je ne sais pas. Quelle carrière, I don't know which career I would like to do. So again, it's nothing to do with a choice. So that leaves us, process of elimination, that leaves us with Anouk. Now, I'm going to write Anouk here, but let's just double check that that is the right answer. So we've got j'ai voulu. Again, that's come up in a previous question, so that must be a common exam word. J'ai voulu, I wanted to do a placement in a tourist office, but other people had the same idea. So I had to find a place in a shopping centre. So now when it comes to the final one, when it comes to B, the one we left to last, we've got this word mairie. Now because we've done all the others first, we can see that we've pretty much used up all of Damien. We've used up all of Christopher. So we're finding someone who did a placement in this place called the mairie. So Anouk did it in the centre commercial, so she was in the shopping centre. So the only one we've got left, look, is Hôtel de Ville, which is town hall, which if you think about it is where the mayor might be. So by process of elimination, our leftover one is Beatrice. And you might just randomly guess Beatrice if you haven't used her for any of the other questions. Remember to look out for tenses. If you've got E with an accent, you're looking for something in past tense. If you've got je vais or je voudrais or à l'avenir, you're looking for future tense. The final part of the reading exam is a translation question. It looks like this. Remember, if you do a first draft of this early in the test, so for example, you start by completing a couple of questions in section A and then you have a go at the translation, this would be a good idea because then you can reread your first draft at the end of the test and make sure that the English makes sense. Because sometimes when we're translating, things can get a little bit muddled up between the two languages. The biggest mistake that pupils make with the translation is they start looking at it word by word and they don't think about the overall meaning of each sentence. You cannot translate word by word. If you do that, you end up with a very confusing and messy translation. For example, in this sentence, I have the hair blacks. We know that in French, adjectives normally go after the word that they're describing. So you really needed to look at the whole chunk and translate it all together. I recommend breaking down the paragraph into sections using the commas and full stops. As it's worth 7 marks, you should look for 7 sections. For example, I would break this paragraph up in the following way. Once I've done that, I can gather information section by section. So instead of looking at it word by word, I can look at the entirety of the first section and I can realise that I understand the word I can understand Italian and I can understand university. So what could that section be telling me? It could be, I study Italian at university, I learn Italian at university, I am studying Italian at university. This would be a logical translation of that chunk. When you look at the section of writing instead of just individual words, you've got more of a chance of guessing what that section means from the context. And if you ask yourself these questions, you can find out the information a lot easier. For example, who is doing the action? In this one, it's I. Are there any time phrases? In this one, no. Which tense is being used? There are no strange endings, so we can assume it's just present tense. Are there any negatives? No. Are there any small but deadly words? No. And what is the overall gist? So as we said, it's something to do with Italian at university. So it's probably I learn Italian at university, I study Italian at university. That would be the most logical answer. If we have a look at another example, Mon frère ne veut pas rester au collège. Who is doing the action? My brother. So it's a sentence about my brother. Do we have any time phrases? No. What tense are we using? Again, it's just a very simple present tense. There's no E with an accent, there's no AIS. Are there any negatives? Yes. So my brother doesn't something. Il ne veut pas rester au collège. Rester, to stay. He doesn't want to stay at school. In this one, il va faire un apprentissage. Who is doing the action? It's he. No time phrases. Now this is a different tense. Il va. Je vais, tu vas, il va. He is going to do, future tense, he's going to do an apprenticeship because he doesn't want to stay at school. Now if you look back, it makes sense, it's logical. My brother doesn't want to go to school, he doesn't want to stay at school, he's going to do an apprenticeship. Je suis allé en Espagne. Straight away we need to be careful of this one because it's got E with an accent, so it's past tense. The examiners are looking to see if you know that. I went to Spain. Pour pratiquer mon espagnol, my Spanish, to practice my Spanish. Si on parle une autre langue, si is one of those small but deadly words. It means if. If we can speak another language, on peut travailler dans un pays différent. We can work in a different is it going to be money? We can work in a different money. What would make more sense? If you speak another language, you can work in a different country. Let's have another look at this one from earlier. Remember, 7 marks, 7 sections. So you can pause here and split it up for yourself. I've split it up like this. Looking at the keywords in this one, we can see that it's going to be about school. And there's probably going to be something to do with future plans because at the end we've got the word university. Now that you've broken it up, have a look at each section and work out the gist. Remember to prompt yourself with these questions. I'm going to show you each sentence. Remember you can pause and work it out for yourself and then press play and see if you got it right. So sentence 1. And the translation. Sentence 2. The translation. Sentence 3. Sentence 4. Sentence 5. Sentence 6. And sentence 7. Again, remember, if that was very fast, go back, pause, work it out for yourself, see if you can translate each sentence. Some of the questions in the reading exam are literature questions. Even though they are taken from French novels, they've been adapted to be suitable for GCSE level. Just treat them the same as other reading questions. So for example, in this one, we have a little bit of information at the top. Make sure you read this. Marcel, 11 years old, tells his family about meeting a girl called Isabelle. This way you have some context. You kind of know what the passage is going to be. So we treat these just the same as other reading questions. We don't read through every single detail. We look at the question and we find out what it is we're looking for. So in question 1, we're looking for a number and we're looking for Isabelle's age. We can see clearly early on that elle a 12 ans. It's always worth revising your numbers before an exam. 12 years old. A very, very easy question, even though it looks daunting because it's a literature question. For the second one, Marcel says that the girl... Now, remember, you can always put the words that you know at the side, and that might help you to match them up a bit easier. So in this one, we've got small, petite, fair hair, something to do with cheveux perhaps. Pretty, we could have belle or jolie, and the sense of humour, amusant, drôle, marrant, something like that. So we can see on the second line, elle est très jolie. So it's going to be C is pretty. So these two questions were very straightforward if you didn't panic and you looked at the question first and you just hunted for the right answer. Let's have a look at the later questions. So here we have Marcel says Isabel's father. So we're not looking for something to do with Isabel, we're looking for something to do with the father. Looks like Isabel, has brown hair, writes poetry, is a friend of his uncle's. So if I scan through and I'm looking for something to do with her father, I will see here, son père est un poète. Very, very easy to match poet with poetry. If we look at the next question, Marcel saw a piano, which made him think that Isabel's father liked music, Isabel was a musician, Isabel's house was big, Isabel's father was rich. So we scan through, it's probably going to be at the end, and we can see un piano énorme. They saw an enormous piano, donc je pense que son père est très riche. So they think that the dad is very rich. So again, even though this is a literature question and it might look a bit more complicated, just treat it the same as any other question. Look at the question first, scan through, match it up. Make sure you've read around the text so you're not just randomly matching words, you're matching it to the correct bit of information. And do you remember earlier I mentioned that you should start section C early in your test and come back to it at the end? This is why. Read my translation. Does this sound like something that you would hand in to your English teacher? How about phrases such as, my linguistic abilities have allowed me to find a job? Does that sound like something you would say to someone in English? How about this phrase? You can find a vacancy for which we need someone who speaks good French. It doesn't quite sound right. If you read over your translation again at the end of the test, you can try to make it sound more pleasant to read in English, but don't start changing the meaning of any sentences, because that might lose some marks. So for example, instead of my linguistic abilities have allowed me to find a job, I might say my linguistic skills have enabled me to find a job in Switzerland. Instead of saying you can find a vacancy for which we need someone who speaks good French, I could say you can find a vacancy which requires someone who speaks French well. That sounds a little bit more natural. Always leave time at the end of the reading paper to read through your translation. And if you've left any gaps, make a sensible guess. Think about what would fit in the paragraph that you're writing. There are lots of little words in French which some students ignore while they're reading. This is very dangerous because they can actually change the whole meaning of the sentence, so you need to look out for them. That's why we call them the small but deadly words. Sometimes they are synonyms, they mean the same as each other. For example, easy and simple. Or sometimes they are antonyms, they mean the opposite, easy and difficult. You need to make sure that you've revised the small but deadly words. You can do this by pausing this screen and looking up any words that you don't know, or you can have a look on Vocab Slam because there's a whole set called Small But Deadly Words which has all of the words which might possibly come up in the exams. And while we're on the subject of Vocab Slam, if you go onto it and you look at the exam zone and exam vocab, you can go through all of the keywords from the past papers, or you can pick a set that's called Examiner's Favourites, which has keywords which we've seen coming up again and again on all of the past exams. I would recommend that you spend some time doing this tonight after watching this video and tomorrow morning right before your exam. So the only thing left to say is bon courage. In this exam, you should be able to get a really good mark just by reading the question carefully and taking in that highlighter and highlighting negatives and looking for meaning changes like but or however. Remember that you should do the translation early and then come back to it with fresh eyes. Do not leave any gaps, especially on multiple choice questions, but also on the whole test. If you have a question that you're not very sure about, what I suggest you do is fold the corner of the paper, and then at the end of the exam you can look for any folded corners and just double check that question. I think this one is going to go really well for you. Hopefully you will be able to get around 37 marks or higher, and then you know that you're close to securing a grade 5. Bon courage, well done for listening. If you want to go back over any bits, remember you can pause, you can listen again, or you can email me if there's something that you're still not sure about. Bon courage et au revoir. Well done for watching this video. You deserve to do really, really well in this test because you've been working hard in class for 5 years. The finishing touches now are just looking up keywords and being very careful when you read the exam itself. So, slam some vocab, go over your Easter booklet so you can read the kind of phrases which have come up in the past, and don't forget, most importantly, to get some rest. I will see you first thing in the morning tomorrow. Bonne chance!